What's up, everyone? Jay here from Tap and Turn Gaming, coming at you with some more Oath of the Gatewatch spoilers. So this is our third video for the spoilers for this set, so let's just jump right on into it. We're going to take a look at some commons, some uncommons, and some rares. So first up we have is Bonesaw. It's a zero-cost equipment. Costs 1 to equip. 1 to equip, and equipped creature gets +1/+0. Pretty basic, nothing really to talk about there. Next we have Seer's Lantern. It's a 3-cost artifact. You can tap it for a colorless mana, or you can pay 2 and tap it to scry 1. So it's kind of like, what was it, Crystal Ball, I believe, that lets you scry, but it's kind of a mana rock as well, so, not bad. Next we have Hedron Crawler, a 2-cost 0/1 artifact creature that taps to add a colorless to your mana pool. Next is Boulder Salvo, a 5-cost red sorcery with Surge for 1 and a red, and it deals 4 damage to target creature. Pretty basic stuff here with the commons. And we have Goblin Freerunner, a 4-cost 3/2 with Surge for 1 and a red with Menace. Then we have Expedite, a 1-cost red instant. Target creature gains haste until end of turn, draw a card. So not only do you give something haste, you can draw a card as well for 1 red mana, so that's pretty solid. Then we have Dwar Isle Avenger, a 5-cost 3/3 flyer, Sphinx, with surge cost of 2 and a blue. And that's basically, it's just a kind of a vanilla 3/3 flying dude that you can potentially pay for 3 mana. Alright, now we're into the uncommon. So first we have Baloth Null. It's a 6-cost 4/5 Golgari colored zombie beast. And when it enters the battlefield, return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Not a bad card overall. There probably are cheaper cards that you can play to get that same effect of getting creatures back from your graveyard to your hand. But, you get a 4/5 body off of this guy along with that effect, so he's not bad. Next we have Void Grafter, a 3-cost 2/4, 1 in Simic for a Eldrazi drone with Devoid and Flash. When it enters the battlefield, another target creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn. That's pretty good. The fact that you can flash it in and nullify, something that your opponent's using to target one of your things is pretty cool. And it's a pretty decent body for 3 mana. It's a 2/4. So overall, I like this card a lot. I could probably see this card maybe fitting into the 99 of some commander decks. If you're going for a like a Simic colored deck where you want to be able to nullify your opponent's things, this guy's not bad. Next we have Weapons Trainer. It's a 2-cost 3/2 human soldier ally. Other creatures you control get +1/+0 for as long as you control an equipment. So I like it because it's an ally, but it also will give your team +1/+0 as long as you have it. It doesn't even have to be equipped to anything, just as long as you control an equipment, you'll get the bonus off of this guy, so not bad. Next we have Storm Chaser Mage, a 2-cost 1/3 human wizard with flying and haste and prowess. So this guy I could probably definitely see being played in some standard decks. He's not as powerful as Mantis Rider, which was basically like a lightning angel, but he doesn't have that vigilance, but he does have the prowess, so you can potentially make him just as big, if not bigger, than Mantis Rider. So this guy might see some play in standard. As far as an EDH outlook on it, it's kind of meh. I probably wouldn't play it just as a 1/3 flyer with haste and prowess. Next we have Cliffhaven Vampire, a 4-cost 2/4 vampire warrior ally with flying. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. So, pretty basic. He would definitely find a home in like a Karlov deck for sure. where you want to be gaining lots of life with that deck. So every time that you do, you can drain your opponent at the same time. Next we have Warping Whale. It's a 2-cost colorless instant. You get to choose one of the following. Exile target creature with power or toughness 1 or less. Counter target sorcery spell, or put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion, blah, 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 blah. So it's overall, for 2 mana, it's a pretty cool card. I like it. From an EDH standpoint, probably wouldn't play it. This might see play, again in Standard or maybe other formats. Maybe it would be a sideboard card in a Standard deck. But from an EDH standpoint, the first ability there probably isn't going to pertain to too many things that your opponent's got out on the board. Don't get me wrong, there are some really powerful creatures out there with power or toughness 1 or less. So, there's definitely targets for this card in EDH, but there's just not a lot that I can think of off the top of my head. Also, you can counter a sorcery spell. That's whatever. I mean, if you're playing a deck with counter magic, you'll probably be playing something else that will just straight up counter any spell. And then the 1/1 Eldrazi Scion, that's whatever. So, I mean, from an EDH standpoint, it's kind of meh. Next we have Walker of the Wastes. He's a 5-cost 4/4 Eldrazi with Trample, and he gets +1/+1. Actually, I think we took a look at this guy in last week's video, so I apologize for that. I might have some duplicates from last week. I kind of tried to quickly compile up the cards, and I may have doubled up on some, so I apologize for that. But next up we have Gift of Tusks. It's a 1-cost blue instant. Till end of turn, target creature loses all abilities and becomes a green elephant with base power and toughness 3/3. Pretty good. It's essentially kind of pseudo removal in blue. You could use this to turn their, Ulamog into a vanilla 3/3 guy and potentially kill it. So, this is definitely not a bad card at all. I mean, I would probably play it in a deck that I'm running blue just as a way to potentially, be able to remove somebody's big nasty threat that they have on the board. Turn it into a 3/3 with no abilities and block it with something to potentially get it off the board. It's definitely not a bad card. Next we have Pyromancer's Assault. It's a 4-cost red enchantment. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, this deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So I want to say that there's, I think there's a legend from this set. It was like a merfolk. I forget his name. His name eludes me at the moment. But he kind of has something similar built in where whenever you cast your second spell in a turn, you get to draw a card. So this lets you deal 2 damage to target creature or player. You probably, later on in the game, in a commander game, you'll probably be playing multiple spells a turn. But I don't think I would take up a slot in my deck for this with that kind of stipulation on it. Maybe I'm in top deck mode and I don't have any ways to draw cards. If I have this on the board, it's essentially a dead card. So with that kind of stipulation on it, it's overall not a bad card, but I probably wouldn't slot it into one of the 99 cards in a deck. But that's just me. Next we have Bonds of Morality. It's a 2-cost green enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and you can pay a green. Creatures your opponents control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. This is a very good card. So this card will strip... what I like about it the most is that it'll strip indestructible off of creatures. Excuse me. So, things like Avacyn and Ulamog and, Darksteel Colossus and Blightsteel Colossus and, all those things that have indestructibility built in. For a lonely green mana, you can strip that off of them, and also hexproof. So cards like Ojutai and From the Last Troll, things like that. You can strip those abilities off of them so you can actually target them and get them off the board, and it draws you a card. So I don't see what else you could really want more from this card. It only costs 2 mana, it draws you a card, and will let you deal with some pretty big menacing threats that are, pretty relevant things in the EDH format. Like I said, like Avacyn and Ulamog and stuff like that. Let you answer those cards. Next we have Relief Captain, a 4-cost 3/2 core knight ally. So I like it because it's a knight and a ally. And when it enters the battlefield, support 3, so you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 3 other target creatures. So overall, it's not a bad card. A 3/2 for 4 is okay. And then the fact that you get to spit around 3 +1/+1 counters among 3 other creatures definitely isn't bad. Would I take up a slot in the 99 of a deck for this guy? Probably not. Next we have Flaying Tendrils. It's a 3-cost black sorcery with Devoid, so it's really not black, it's colorless, but it costs 2 black mana to cast. But anyway, all creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. If a creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Pretty damn solid card. So, this essentially, shuts out anybody playing a token deck. Maybe they're generating Saprolings or 1/1 soldiers or whatever it may be. This will wipe pretty much all the tokens that your opponent's playing off the board. And also, some of their weaker creatures, if they have 2 or less toughness, this will get them off the board and exile them at the same time. So overall, this card gets my thumbs up. Next we have Reaver Drone, a 1-cost 2/1 Eldrazi drone with Devoid at the beginning of your upkeep. If you don't control another colorless creature, you lose 1 life. So, just a 1-cost creature with 2 power with some sort of drawback. Definitely a card built for Standard, I would imagine. Because in Standard you generally want to be pretty aggressive. So this card lets you do that. Granted that it'll drain 1 life off of you unless you control another colorless guy, but that's probably not a bad trade-off to get a 2-power creature down on the board on turn 1. But clearly from an EDH standpoint, something that I probably wouldn't play, and something that a lot of other people probably wouldn't play in their deck either. Next we have Eldrazi Mimic. He is a 2-cost 2/1. Whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, he may change his base power and toughness to that creature's power and toughness. Not a bad card. So he kind of retains, himself. He doesn't become a copy of that card. He just gets as big as that card. So if you, drop something like an Ulamog, he'll turn into a 10/10. Or, if you play like an Avacyn or something, he'll become an 8/8. So, he's not bad. He has the potential to do some serious damage depending on what else you're dropping on the board. But I probably, if this were like a clone, if it became a copy of a creature that enters the battlefield, I would definitely consider playing it in some of my decks, seeing as it's colorless. But the fact that it only copies its power and toughness, it's okay. But I probably wouldn't put it in the 99. Next we have Reality Smasher, a 5-cost 5/5 with Trample and Haste. When he becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, counter that spell unless its controller discards a card. Pretty damn solid card. So a 5/5 for 5 mana is good. It also has Trample and Haste, which is very good. And basically, unless your opponent has a card that they can pitch to be able to target this guy, he's just going to smash their face. So, even if they pitch a card, they're losing 2 cards out of their hand just to get rid of this guy. So he's pretty damn good. So this guy's definitely a really good beater. Um, Normally when I'm looking for creatures for a deck, I generally want to include things that have some sort of, enter the battlefield type effect, or, some sort of activated ability. So just looking at this guy, he's a 5/5 with trample and haste, but he does have that built-in ability to kind of protect himself. So, for me, it's probably not something that I would consider throwing into a deck, because, when all is said and done, he's really just a 5/5 beater with haste and trample. But, if you are building some sort of very aggressive style deck and you just want to turn dude sideways and smash face, this guy could definitely be an auto include for you. Next up, we have Matter Reshaper. He's a 3-cost 3/2 Eldrazi. When he dies, reveal the top card of your library. You may put that card onto the battlefield if it's a permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. So, if the card doesn't meet that stipulation of the mana cost of 3 or less, you just draw it. If it does have converted mana cost 3 or less, it goes right onto the board. So, either way, when this guy dies, he's netting you value. You're either getting something straight onto the board or you're drawing a card. So, I like this guy overall. I could definitely see it as that he is a 3-cost card himself. He would be pretty phenomenal in tiny leaders, because, in tiny leaders, all your stuff has to be 3 or less cost. So when he dies, he's going to get something onto the board no matter what. So, he's pretty cool. I like him a lot. Next we have Thought-Knot Seer, a 4-cost 4/4. When he enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it and exile that card. Sorry about that little Firefox pop-up there. And when he leaves the battlefield, target opponent draws a card. So, a little bit of a drawback there. When he leaves the board, somebody gets to draw a card. But, they at least have to exile a card from their hand when he enters the battlefield. Would I, again, purely looking at this from an EDH outlook, this guy I probably wouldn't try to cram into the 99 of a deck, just to be able to exile a card from somebody's hand. If I want to do that, I'll just play Karn Liberated, and he'll let me do it. I'm sure there's other cards that you could play that'll let you exile a card from your opponent's hand. Granted, it is an enter the battlefield effect, so you could abuse it with flicker effects, but then again, when he gets flickered out, he's going to leave the board, and one of your opponents gets to draw a card. So that kind of trade-off, for me, at least from an EDH outlook, I probably wouldn't play this guy. Maybe some people would. I don't know. Leave me some comments in the comment section below about what you think of this guy, but I overall probably wouldn't play him in any type of deck that I have. Excuse me. Next we have Sifter of Skulls, a 4-cost 4/3 Eldrazi with Devoid. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you get a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion, blah blah blah, sack it to get a colorless. So he's pretty similar to Pawn of Ulamog, except he costs 1 more mana, but he is a lot tougher. He's a 4/3. So he's got a very similar ability to Pawn of Ulamog. But I would probably play this guy. I'm actually in the progress of building a deck around the new legendary guy from the Golgari Commander Precon. His name eludes me at the moment, but I'm building a deck around him, and the deck's pretty much built all around sacrificing things to make my team bigger. It also, that guy will make your team bigger whenever your opponents sacrifice things too. But this guy would fit right into that deck. He is black, and whenever one of my other non-token creatures dies, I get a guy to replace it that I can sacrifice to, excuse me, to keep fueling that ability. So this guy I would probably definitely play in that deck that I'm making, but I could definitely see this guy finding a home in other decks too, because as we all know, EDH is a very wrath-heavy meta. So at least if you have this guy on the board, maybe some other non-token dudes, at least you'll get some 1/1 dudes to replace them when they all die if someone board wipes. Next we have Sylvan Advocate, a 2-cost 2/3 with Vigilance. And as long as you control 6 or more lands, he and land creatures you control get +2/+2. So very dependent on whether or not you're using the Awaken ability or any other cards that animate your lands into guys. I've said before in the past that I generally don't want to animate my lands into guys because then somebody could board wipe and then I'm without a bunch of lands. But overall, maybe we'll see him played in Standard or some other format. I mean, a 2-cost 2/3 definitely isn't bad, and he's got Vigilance, so that's just the body, and that ability isn't bad. But generally, like I said, I don't want to be turning my lands into guys in EDH so that they can just get board wiped off the board. So. Moving on, now we're into, actually we've been into the rares for a while, but next card we have is Fall of the Titans. It's a 1-cost red instant with double X, but you can surge it for 1 red and 1 red and X instead of double X. And Fall of the Titans deals X damage to each of up to 2 target creatures and or players. So, just a kind of another version of many of the other X burn spells that we've seen in the past, things like Comet Storm and stuff of that nature. It's not really that impressive of a card, but if you surge it, it's definitely not bad. So if you dump 6 mana into the X, you can deal 6 damage to up to 2 target creatures and or players. So it's definitely not a bad card. But it definitely benefits if you've already cast another spell before you cast this one. Next we have Bearer of Silence. He's a 2-cost 2/1 Eldrazi with Devoid. He has flying and he can't block, and when you cast him, you may pay 1 and a colorless. If you do, target opponent sacrifices a creature. So he's very similar to Gatekeeper of Malakir. So, that guy had a kicker cost of 1 black. So, but this guy's got a very similar type effect built in. So you can pay an additional, 1 and a colorless upon casting this guy, and your opponent will be forced to sacrifice a creature. It's not a bad card. Not something that I am excited about for EDH, but maybe, it'll be played in Standard or some other formats or whatnot. But strictly from an EDH standpoint, it's not that great. Next we have Overwhelming Denial, a 4-cost blue instant with Surge for 2 blue, and it can't be countered by spells or abilities and counter target spell. So I could definitely see this being played in any deck that's running blue and you're playing counter magic, because you could play some sort of cheap blue cantrip before you cast this card and be able to cast it for that surge cost of just 2 blue, so it essentially turns into counter spell that also can't be countered. So it's definitely a very good counter spell. Like I said, if it's on your opponent's turn and they're trying to cast some big nasty threat, you could cast some sort of really cheap blue instant, maybe like a I don't know, a Ponder. I don't know if Ponder's an instant, but some cheap little cantrip card just to lower the cost on this, and then boom, Overwhelming Denial and counter that spell, and then they can't counter this. So definitely you could see this finding a home in any deck where people are playing counter magic. Next we have Zendikar Resurgent. It's a 7-cost green enchantment. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana to your mana pool of any type that land produced, and whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. Very, very nice card. I will probably be adding this into a lot of my decks that play green, so it essentially doubles my mana, and it lets me draw a card whenever I cast a creature. So it does cost a lot at 7 mana, but it's definitely worth it. Mana doubling and card draw all on one card. It's very nice. Next we have Hedron Alignment. It's a 3-cost blue enchantment with hexproof. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may reveal your hand. If you do, you win the game if you own a card named Hedron Alignment in exile, in your hand, in your graveyard, and on the battlefield. And you can pay 1 and a blue to scry 1. For EDH, this card's useless, because, as we all know, you can only have 1 copy of any given card in your deck that's not a basic land. So, for EDH, this card is absolutely useless, other than the fact that you can use it to scry 1. But, if you want to scry 1, play Crystal Ball. That lets you scry 2, I believe. So, there's definitely much better cards that you can play than this, just to be able to scry, because that whole you win the game clause isn't going to affect you at all in EDH, because you can only play 1 copy of this card in your deck. So, from EDH, it's garbage. Next we have Eldrazi Displacer, 3-cost 3/3 with Devoid. Pay 2 and a colorless, exile another target creature, then return it to the battlefield tapped. So this may have been a card we looked at last week. If it is, I apologize, but definitely a really nice card. A 3/3 for 3 isn't bad. The fact that he lets you flicker things is even better. Next we have Oath of Chandra. It's a 2-cost red legendary enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to target creature an opponent controls. At the beginning of each end step, if a planeswalker entered the battlefield under your control this turn, Oath of Chandra deals 2 damage to each opponent. It's not a bad card. So it's kind of essentially like a, was it like Lightning Spear or something like that, or maybe Incinerate. That deals 3 damage. Doesn't let you target an opponent with it, just one of their creatures. Then the second ability, is not bad. It's kind of like a Perforos, except for planeswalkers. So overall, for 2 mana, it's got some solid stuff on it. I probably wouldn't cram it into the 99 of a deck. Unless I'm playing some sort of like Super Friends deck that plays, a crap ton of planeswalkers, then I could get that, 2 damage in constantly. But me personally, it's kind of a meh card. I probably wouldn't play it in any of my decks. But I do like the flavor text on this. Kind of shows you how much of a sassy Sue Chandra is. So it says, if it means that people can live in freedom, yeah, I'll keep watch. So I really do like that. Next we have Drana's Chosen. It's a 4-cost 2/2 vampire shaman ally with cohort. So you can tap it and tap an untapped ally you control to put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. So this card will probably be going into my general Tazri deck whenever I get my hands on one of him, because I am building 5-color tribal allies in EDH. Once I saw General Tazri last week, I was like, thank you, magic gods, for answering my prayers. So this is pretty good. Really only good if you're playing allies, but this will be good in my tribal ally deck that I'm going to build. Next we have Oath of Gideon, a 3-cost white legendary enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, put 2 1/1 white core ally creature tokens onto the battlefield, and each planeswalker you control enters the battlefield with an additional loyalty counter on it. Pretty damn solid card. So for 3 mana, you get 2 1/1s, and it makes it so that all your planeswalkers that you play come in with 1 more loyalty counter. Solid. I like it. And that's it. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, thumbs it up. Let me know that you did enjoy it, so that we know to keep making spoiler videos like this in the future. Leave me some comments below what you thought of these cards. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, Tap and Turn Gaming, please crush that subscribe button. We really do appreciate it. This has been Jay with Tap and Turn Gaming. Again, hope everybody enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and we'll catch you later. Thanks a lot for watching.